Welcome to my office and to the inside of my brain. Today I'm going to attempt to explain something to you that just isn't out there anywhere else. I'm going to let you into my brain and show you how a really systems-focused entrepreneur manages to achieve so much. Now, this isn't so much a system, but it's a logical way of thinking things through. So lots of people know how to set visions, they know how to set goals, they even know how to do strategic planning and quarterly goals. And if you're really, really lucky, you also know how to do the rhythms, so how you actually take that strategic plan and those quarterly goals and you turn them into actions that you achieve and you measure. But even if you have all of that, there's something underlying that you really need to understand. Now, I am dyslexic, so my brain does work in a different way, and I think that's why I understand it, and I'm going to try to explain it to you. I don't know whether you know this about me already, but I am actually a qualified adult educator and have taught for years and years. So we're going to hop on over to my whiteboard, and before you ask me, yes, I'm going to write directly on my wall, and before you email me to ask me what it is a resin whiteboard paint that you paint directly over your wall. It's an epoxy that you mix together and allows you to use your wall as a whiteboard. And yes, it is amazing. And yes, it does work. And yes, you can get the whiteboard off. So, shall we get started? This is going to be a long one, so stick with me. I've come up with an analogy that I hope will help you. So excuse me while I refer to this because it'll jog my memory. So you basically go from your vision, which is in your head and connected to your soul, right? Like a vision must be soul-based. It's really not in your head. It's how you feel. It's connected to your purpose here on earth. And if you think of your vision like a food experience. So we're going to take this whole thing and we're going to tuck it into a food experience. So if you like, your vision would be what you imagine that whole food experience is going to be like. What's the restaurant going to be like? What are the lightings like? Who are the people there with you? How do you feel in your heart? What can you taste in your mouth? It's connecting to all of those really deep things rather than to your brain. And your vision is what keeps you going. So if you were planning a food experience, you would keep referring back to how do I want my customers to feel in that actual restaurant in my future vision in 20 years' time. Then you would come down to your goals, and your goals would be your brain. So it's brain-based thinking, but it would be planning what are you going to eat. So I'm going to have an entree, I'm going to have a main, I'm going to have a dessert, I'm going to have coffee, and then I'm going to have cheese and crackers. So it's broad-based thinking, if you like. Then you're moving on down to your strategic plan, and your strategic plan could be the steps. So what are the steps involved in making each of those dishes? Then you'd come down to your quarterly goals, and your quarterly goals are actually the doing. They're actually the making the food. Your monthly direction would be buying the groceries, and your weekly tasks would be the making of the food, and your daily measurement would be tasting it and then judging that food. So I hope that analogy has helped you to figure out how the vision trickles down. It's kind of like a funnel. So your vision is always going to be the overarching thing that helps you connect to that and stay directed. And then it gets finer and finer and finer and finer. And now we're going to talk through some practical things that you can do. So for your vision, you've got an overall vision, and that's probably 20 years in the future, right? It doesn't have to have a time limit on it, and it's best if you don't put a time limit on a vision, but it's probably quite future forwarded. It's probably quite far in the future. And what you need to do to make your vision usable and to take it down the funnel is to start chunking it down a little bit. Now, the way that you can do this, you can brainstorm it, or you can chunk it together, or you can journal, or whatever works for you. But ideally you want to say, okay, so I'm going to achieve my 20-year vision. Now I'm going to chunk it down. What will I be doing? What will I have achieved in the next 5 years? So pause me if you want to and go and answer that question. Go and ask your soul, what will we be doing in 5 years' time? Then what will we be doing in 10 years' time? What will we be doing in 15 years' time? And what will we be doing in 20 years' time? So that's chunked up your vision a little bit. So for example, if you want to run amazing retreats in Spain in 20 years' time, in 5 years' time you might have started to run some retreats in New Zealand so that you have some experience. Then in 10 years' time you might have your first 5 retreat staff working with you in New Zealand. Then in 15 years' time you might buy your first property in Spain and start running retreats there. And in 20 years' time, boom, it's all big. And that's how you've chunked it down. So since we've started talking about retreats in Spain, that's where we're going to head. So, in order to have our goals set, the goal isn't too future forwarded. And I know that lots of people like to set goals for New Year's resolutions, but I don't. I set goals all the time, and I might set a year-long goal and then I smash it out in 3 months, and then you're like, well, then what? Do I take the rest of the year off? Well, I'd get bored, so I couldn't possibly do that. So I tend not to set a too future forwarded time limit on that. So for example, if I want my first goal, so if I'm considering the first 5 years, I'm going to have to take that down even further to do my goal. So if my vision for the next 5 years was to start running retreats in New Zealand to gain some experience, I might then take that further down and go, okay, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And that is exactly how you do a strategic plan, but for now we'll just stick with the goals. So say in a year's time, my goal might be that I have researched other retreats in the area or around the world to find out what works and what doesn't and decide what I want to do. So let's go ahead and write that up here. So my 1 year goal, or if you like, goals. First of all, let's go down to a strategic plan and do the first 5 years. So the first year might look like researching and making a plan. And then the second year might be building my centre, etc., etc. So let's just go with the first 2 years, right? We only need the first year in order to show you the how to take your strategic plan down further. So now we're going to jump back up to our goals and we're going to take just year 1. So what would I do in year 1? What goals would I actually need to set in order to achieve researching and making a plan for my retreats in New Zealand? Okay, so my goal is, and I need to be specific, remember who, what, when, how, why. So my goal is going to be that I have a solid plan for a 5-day retreat by June 2020. And of course you would expand that with the how you feel and the specifics of that, but we're not going to do that right now, right? Because you've already got a video on how to go and do that part. So those are our specifics. So I need to have researched and I need to have a solid plan. So those are going to be the parts that are in my goal. Then, to make a strategic plan for that 1 year, I would ask myself, so what is it that I actually need to do to come up with a solid plan to run my first retreat in New Zealand? Okay, so then I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to think about the steps, and then I might brainstorm that. So I would start with having a plan in the middle, and then I would branch out from that, and I would say, first of all, I need to visit some retreats. Well, that sounds like hard work, doesn't it? Then I would need to research different techniques and what I might offer, what I could do myself and what I might outsource. And I might also research locations. So now I've got something on my strategic plan, then I can start to tease it out. And a strategic plan, don't worry, I will give you a template for it. It's actually on a spreadsheet because it's a more dynamic way to do it. There are lots of strategic plans that are on a 1-page document and they say this is what you're going to do overall and then that quarter and that quarter, but it's 1 page. Like, you really need it to be more dynamic than that, and that's why a lot of those systems don't work, because they just cover one part, whereas you need something that can actually cover all the parts. And I've come up with a spreadsheet system that you will have access to that allows you to do all of this on here. This is really just the thinking behind it. But basically, for a strategic plan, so you take one part, so visiting the other centres to find out what's going on. I would then break that down into a quarterly goal, and I might first of all research 4 different locations in New Zealand and 4 different locations in Australia, say, because they're close enough to me, and then I'm going to visit 1 each month. So that's what my quarterly plan would be, okay? So are you starting to understand how we had a vision, we set a goal, then we set a strategic plan for the 1 year, but we always have our eye on the next 5 years, and we also know what's happening year 10, year 15, and year 20. So that kind of gives you the flow that you need to keep going. You really do need to focus on the future if that's what you're going to be manifesting. and then we take our strategic plan down to a quarterly goal. So it's kind of chunked down. Hopefully you're starting to see how that all funnels down. Once we have the quarterly goal set, then we're going to set a monthly direction. So a monthly direction, for me, the first month is going to be that I have to research other retreats that I actually want to visit that are worth my time. So that would be, let's say January, I'm going to undertake research. Therefore my weekly task would be to research 5 different centres each week, and at the end of the month I want the outcome to be that I've decided the 4 that I'm going to visit in New Zealand. Then my daily measurement is going to be how many centres did I contact today. You should always measure your actions daily. So that's it. That's what's in my brain. That's how you get right from the big part right down to the bottom. Now, the spreadsheet, I have also made a video on how to use that and explained it a little bit further on where you put your strategic plan, how you break it down to the quarterly goals, and then how you get from the month to the week to the day. So I've explained the month, the week and the day, which is this part here, a little bit closer for you. If you can't see what's on my whiteboard, it doesn't matter. You actually don't really need to see that because I've explained it all to you. But if you want me to take you a little bit closer, come on over with me. So you can see the vision leads down to the goals, leads down to the strategic plan, and then the monthly rhythms, then the weekly actions and the daily measurements. So I hope that's been of help to you, and I hope that the look inside my entrepreneurial brain hasn't been too frightening for you. And if your brain doesn't work in the same way as me, don't panic. We all work in different ways. I'll see you in the next video.